Well, the latest misstep in Anthony Albanese's federal election campaign has been his on-again, off-again promise to raise wages by 5.1%, or the minimum wage by 5.1%, in line with the inflation rate. Now, I've been saying for the better part of 3 weeks now that if you increase the minimum wage to meet inflation, you create what's called a wage price spiral. Now, finally, other people are talking about this, and most recently, Terry McCrann, who's one of the most experienced and respected finance writers in the country. And he's pointed out the bleeding obvious, that if you try to combat inflation by pushing up wages, all you're doing is making the problem worse. And Canberra businesses are now saying that raising the minimum wage in line with the cost of living would see Canberra businesses passing on those costs to consumers. Which, what does that mean? Well, it's a snowballing impact on inflation. Now, we know that there's labour shortages across the territory, which have seen small businesses hiking up wages to attract and retain staff for quite some time now, particularly in the hospitality industry, which means that they've got to pass that on, otherwise they go broke. And, well, we know here in Canberra with Canberra City Council, they're trying to send business broke anyway. But it's one of these, another example of Labor's strategy at this election is say it quickly and it sounds good, but as soon as you dig down or scrape the surface just slightly, you realise that it all falls apart. And that's why you got various members of the front bench, Labor's front bench, trying to backtrack on this promise yesterday, that in last night's leaders' debate, Anthony Albanese, well, he belled the cat and said, well, I really don't have much influence over this. I can suggest to the Fair Work Commission that they do it, but ultimately they're independent and they'll make their own decisions based on economic indicators and other factors, and it really doesn't matter what I think. I'm just going to say it because there's an election campaign going on and you might be silly enough to believe it. Well, he's been back for more than a week now. Alan Jones is on ADH TV Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. You can watch him via adh.tv or on the ADH app, and he joins us now. Alan, good morning.
Stephen, hello. How are you?
Very, very well. We would all like to see real wages go up, but the concept of a wage price spiral is not new to anybody that lived through the 80s. We just seem to have forgotten about it.
Yes. Look, there are so many issues here, I think, wrapped up in one. Firstly, there's this question of inflation, and as your listeners know, if inflation goes up, it has to be checked, and interest rates go up. What concerns two things about this. The 5.1 thing is fiction. He has no control over wages. That'll be determined by the Fair Work Commission, and I understand the ACTU. That matter is already in process, by the way. It would be extraordinary for any leader to make a late intervention into that process. There are two kinds of inflation here. One is the underlying inflation and the head inflation rate. Now, the head inflation rate is based on everything that has gone up, including factors that may be erratic and one-off. So the issue here is underlying inflation, which is about 3.7%. And I think most employers would think that was a reasonable figure to strike by the Fair Work Commission. Some say it might come out at 4%. The problem is, of course, for the average bloke out there, the cost of everything is getting way ahead of his wages. What does concern me, though, about the inflation is that both in the budget and now in this election campaign, billions of dollars have been tipped into the economy. And so far, I think the spending promises by both these parties approximate $20 billion. Now, if you chuck this money into the economy and it's out there chasing goods and services that are limited, then the price of everything goes up. So the spending promises in this campaign are themselves inflationary as well. And no one in the panels in those debates so far seems to have asked the question about that. We've got to cut back on spending. We have to cut back on debt. We certainly have got to hope that the worker gets a fair return for his pay, but we, rightly, as you say, have got to avoid a wage price spiral. Shove the wage up, the price of the goods go up, and it's a merry-go-round. It keeps chasing itself. But if you're talking inflationary pressures, the spending that's going on is absolutely irresponsible.
Yeah, there's no two ways about that, and I think we as the voter have got to take some responsibility for that too, because we're constantly asking about what's in it for us.
Yeah, handout. Yeah,
exactly.